Hi, I'm Lou Scott, and this is the Geppetto Room, where you don't have to be creative to be creative. You just have to be you. Because here we're going to explore activities, methodologies to make it easier for you. Easier for you to communicate, to innovate, to transform your ideas and your decisions into practical solutions that Vermont needs, to enrich the way you work, the way you play, the way you live in our state. Now, recently, I had a conversation with a couple of neurologists and scientists, and it's amazing to me how much science they have, what they've learned about the brain and how the brain works and the potential of the brain in the last few years. And I'm going to share it with you. I'm charmed about the way they explain this potential, and I'm going to share that with you too, this charming way they do it. They use a comparison. The first thing they say to you is, well, in our Milky Way, there are 100 billion stars in our Milky Way, which is 200,000 light years in diameter. That's pretty big space, knowing that the light travels at 186,000 miles a second. So you're measuring 200,000 years of light. So that's a big, big space. However, they'll say again that in your brain, which is about 8 or 9 inches or 10 inches in diameter, there are, and listen to this, there are over 100 trillion neurons. These are the things that make our brain work. These are the things that make our ability to consume, to actually think our consciousness and make decisions. At the same time, there is over 100 trillion synapses, combinations that the brain comes together to make a linear or nonlinear decisions. Okay, and nonlinear is where the creativity is. Okay, it's interesting stuff. Then they'll end it and they'll say, well, simply, if you take 10 to the 800th power, that means that if you take 10 and multiply it 800 times, that's the extent of the potential of your brain. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that number is probably bigger than all the stars, certainly in the Milky Way, and in our cosmos, and all the cosmos that we'll ever find, and we'll ever find in the future. Now, it's a big number. So we have this great potential in our brain, and we're not using it all, and that's what this whole show is all about. Then they went on and they talked about some of the things that they discovered, and just a few of the things. Let me share it with you. One thing is they know that brain has locality. If they put you on an MRI, you will they can see how your emotional thing, where the brain lights up, where the neurons light up, they can tell whether you're happy, whether you're sad, whether you're depressed, and even from a clinical standpoint, they can tell you if you have tendency, if you're depressed, if you have tendencies for suicide. Think about what that can mean to save lives if they can predict the idea that you are suicidal and they can get care instead of release you from the hospital, whatever the case might be. That's an amazing thing, and we're all like that. The same things light up in all our brains. The second thing they talk about is clusters. The brain neurons store information and make decisions in clusters. Okay? Now, physicists say that the clusters have more than 3 dimensions. Now, there could be 4, could be 5 dimensions. Now, don't hold me to the physics because I don't understand this, the mathematics that says it, okay? But the bottom line is this. The bottom line is that the brain has this power, not only to make decisions, to store a tremendous amount of data, which we can use to make decisions. The more data we have, the more better decisions we can make. Certainly the nonlinear decisions, which are the ones that are creative and transformative. I find that fascinating. Now, one scientist told me, he said that it's a possibility that the brain is quantum mechanics. Now, what does that mean? It means that in a regular computer, the computer makes a decision by deciding between a plus and a 1 and a plus, or a 1 and a 0. Now, in the quantum idea, the concept is that the neuron could have plus and minus, or plus and a 0 at the same time, the same place. Again, Don't hold me to the quantum theory. Very few people understand it. But the bottom line is that the ability of the brain is tremendous. It's tremendous ability, potential that we have to store information and also to manipulate that information, to mix and match it, to make better decisions. The third thing they told me about is, and I found this probably be the best, the most phenomenal. The brain has the ability, they can take an electrode, put it in your brain, say on a paraplegic person or a quadriplegic, and by his thought, by just his thought, he can translate the thought of the brain into electromechanical energy. That energy can be used to move a prosthesis, probably move his legs or his arms and so forth. Think of the freedom, the clinical freedom for those kind of people if that can be done. And the brain has this ability. Now, when I'm talking with him, I get excited about the whole thing and the idea. And at the same time I'm excited, I'm a little sad. And I'll tell you why. There are thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people, that have the same brain as we have and so forth, but are geniuses. They're savants, meaning they have specialties in music and in art without ever having lessons. They just have it, okay? Or they're born child prodigies. Now, how come I'm not? I think about how come I'm not a genius? How come you're not a genius? Now, it bothers me that they have the same brain matter, the same size, the same number of neurons, and they're a hell of a lot smarter than we are. They're geniuses and so forth. Now, one day, I'm quite sure science will find out why they have that ability. What are they plugging into that we're not plugging into? When they do, it's a possibility that all of us will be geniuses. That should be a very interesting society. Meanwhile, they don't have the answer, but they do have this answer. They know that the brain, by mechanisms and activities, the brain can be coached into making better decisions, transformative decisions. And that's what this show is all about. Now, for the last 11 months, I've been talking about 35 activities and mechanisms that'll help us make it easier for you to make better decisions. And ladies and gentlemen, Vermont needs better decisions because it has a lot of problems. We're getting older as a population, it's a demographic problem. Our infrastructures, our towns could use more downtown business. Our youth is leaving, our colleges are closing. We have a lot of problems. Those problems cannot be solved with old ideas, only creative ideas, nonlinear ideas. And that's what we've been talking about. We've been talking about these concepts, okay? These concepts that can help probe the brain, prompt the brain, ignite the neurons to make better decisions. Now, unlike the other shows, today I'm going to go over 10 Geppetto moments. Before, I'm not going to talk about my dioramas and create stories. I'm just going to talk about 10 Geppetto moments, 10 activities. Now, they're not the best ones because what's best for me may not be best for you. That's why we have a lot of opportunities to use what we want, what we feel more comfortable with. So the best is what's best for you. These were best for me because I found them in my experience to be good, helpful, and also people around me in a time when I was doing creative work, they help them too. Now, if you want a copy of all the ideas that we covered in the last 11 months, please send me an email and I will send it to you, the 30 or 35 activities with a little explanation. But today, I'm going to discuss the 10 that I found to be effective for me. The first one is what I call table of contents reading. That means the more you put into your brain, the more it has the ability to mix and match. I do a lot of reading, and I read nonfiction. Now, it's impossible to read all the books unless you read with this technique. Now, table of contents reading is the following. Most nonfiction books have a lot of fill. 2 or 3 chapters probably are the nucleus of what the author wants to say. So what I do is I pick up a book, or 2 or 3 at the same time, and I'll read the table. I'll first read the introduction. It tells me what his intentions are, what the author wants to project in the writing. Then I'll look at the table of contents, and I'll find the chapters that pop out at me. Now, I may read the whole book or just read the chapters, okay? And in that way, I can be reading 8 or 9 books at the same time. And what I'm doing is I'm filling the brain with data. I may not remember it all, but unconsciously the brain deals with that. The neurons deal with that. And when I'm making a decision, or have to make a decision or come up with a creative thought, that information, that data comes up in various combinations. That's table of contents reading, and I recommend it. The next one is brain mapping. Remember when you were in grammar school and the teacher would have, you have to diagram a sentence and it looked like a spider lines coming off spider legs, and you would put all the verbs and the adverbs and so forth. Well, do the same thing when you're thinking about a decision. When you're thinking about, you have to create an idea. Put the idea on a piece of paper and begin to draw these spider legs and write in what the parameters are of the idea. If 2 or 3 of them are related, put a dotted line on them. If they're very important, put an asterisk. What you're doing is you're creating a graft of your thoughts, your graft of your idea. And the brain reads that graft and ignites more neurons, and you'll make better decisions and more efficient, called brain mapping. The third one is brainstorming now. We're in a state that when we have a problem, what we do is we have a town meeting. Lots of people stand up, there are some ideas presented, but most of the time people are telling you anecdotes, they're complaining, whatever the case might be. There are a lot of books on brainstorming, and I would recommend that you get one to look at. But all of the books recommend 3 principles of brainstorming, and these are it. A small group, 7, 8, 9 people, small group. All ideas. Everybody initially just talks about ideas. No anecdotes, no stories, no complaints, just ideas. And the third one, which is very important, no criticisms. If you criticize an idea in the process of brainstorming, everybody stops. The brain does not register the idea. Everybody goes in for themselves. The brain goes into itself. You can't criticize. So the 3 important elements are small groups, just ideas. Later on, you can discuss the good and bad of the idea, but initially, you just want ideas. And that's where you're going to get the transformative ideas. The third element of good brainstorming, no criticism. Now, the 4th methodology I use is meditation. I meditate. Now, meditation relaxes the brain, it relaxes the body, it actually allows you to get inside your subconscious more so. Now, let me give you a story. In Columbia Presbyterian, when they were hospital in New York, one of the best hospitals in the world, when they were doing open heart surgery, they had the patient of the open heart surgery, the patient would have to meditate, among other holistic things, meditate. And they had the best outcomes for years and years and years. Meditation relaxed the patient. It made the patient more susceptible to good outcomes and so forth. And so meditation not only makes you a better thinker, it may increase your life. I would agree, meditate. Again, there's lots of books. Buy the books or get the books, whatever go to the library, get the books, and pick out the meditation technique that's best for you. The 5th one that I find, the Geppetto moment or activity, is creative location. If you go to Silicon Valley and any of those businesses out there with all the geniuses, you will find rooms that they ideate, the ideation rooms, environments where they go to create ideas. If you look at a daycare center with kids, why are kids imaginative? Why are they so creative? Because the environment they're in has lots of visual stimulation, and there's an element of play. What I mean is, in creative location, you're not going to come up with an idea, a transformative idea, good idea, in the boardroom. Not going to happen. It's too formal. You want a room with lots of visual stimulation, and the idea that every creative idea that you want, there has to be an element of play. So creative location, create a playroom, essentially. You'll come up with better ideas. Now, there are many apps on the phone that'll help you create more data in your brain. I use an app called Flipboard. You can get it, I use it on my phone. Flipboard, what they do is they analyze or go through every week, every day actually, 500 different magazines that I would never buy, probably never read. Every day I go to my phone and I look up, and they give you stories about various stories from physics and human nature to business and so forth, and you go through these stories, and it's very convenient, and you're putting it into your brain. You're putting it into those clusters into your brain. Those are fodders. Those are the information that the brain will use later on when you start to create ideas. It'll mix and match, especially the nonlinear. The more data you have, the more linear, more nonlinear you can think, and that's where the creativity is. That's where the best ideas are. Now, the other one I use is Google. Now, I don't use Google to plagiarize. I use Google to stimulate my brain, to store data into those clusters. Now, let me tell you a story. I was in an organization, and somebody came and wanted us to donate some money. And we asked why. And he said, well, because they were going to build a doggy park. I said, well, do you have a vision for the doggy park? Do you have ideas for a doggy park? Any concepts? He said, no, it's just going to be for fencing, for dogs do their duty. Well, we didn't give him the money. One reason, because he didn't have a plan. It certainly wasn't a creative idea. Okay. Now, after that meeting, I Googled doggy parks. I found hundreds, if not thousands of ideas, phenomenal concepts for doggy parks, not just a doo-doo place. Doggy park for people, for gathering people. It was a wonderful concept and so forth. So when you go to Google, you don't want to plagiarize. What you want to be able to do if you're looking at an idea, you want to be able to bring data to your brain. The more data you have, the more you can stimulate your brain. The more the brain is stimulated, the more creative ideas, and we need creative ideas. We need creative ideas. The ninth one is walk the woods. Now, we live in a state that's 80% wooded. And here's how you use it to generate better ideas. The woods, obviously, trees, absorb CO2, so it's more oxygen. They create oxygen. You feel healthier. Also, the trees give off a chemical. They emit a chemical called, I think it's phyocin, that's called. And that chemical enriches your immune system. It actually does that. It can help organs who might be not functioning right to function better. It's phenomenal. It's like walking into a doctor's office, not taking any pills, just walking in this environment. But you have to do it a particular way. If you want to get the best of walking in the woods, from a physical standpoint, you got to do two things with one result. Two things are, you have to walk slowly, and you have to breathe deeply from your stomach. And not only will you'll find that you can solve a lot of creative ideas. A lot of your decisions can be made transformative that way. But most likely, you'll live longer. The last one is we have to get out of our comfort zone. If we're going to solve our problems in Vermont, ladies and gentlemen, we all have to contribute. And we can't solve new problems, as I said often, with old ideas. We need new ideas. Science and technology is creating our future. If we don't step in and participate in that future, it's just going to bowl us over. We have to all get out of our comfort zone and contribute together if we want not to face what's been predicted as a very dire economic situation for our future in our state. Now, this episode, we have a special guest. Today's special guest is Dan Dunges. Dan is the owner of Vermont Sport and Fitness, and he's going to share with us why it's important for young children, why it's important to their brain and their body for young children to exercise and get outside, but exercise. And we're going to share those information with Dan. Hi, Dan. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Okay. Let me ask you. So, first question is, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get involved in athletic? What did you do? Tell me about it.
Right. So, from a very young age, I played. So in the house, played.
Okay.
Played blocks, played forts, played outside, played ball. Our house was full of kids. I'm one of four. and two very active parents. So we were always moving. So long winters in Vermont, we'd find games to play. We'd set up pillows, we'd get balloons. So I don't think I ever wasn't playing. And the big joke in my family, obviously being the owner of the club with my wife, is that my mom says, well, I was wondering how you were going to find a life just playing, because she didn't think I'd ever be able to do anything else. So
I'm going to be a player, Ma.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just going to play. So it worked out. And so that was sort of what happened to me, is I just enjoyed movement, the physicality of things. I have a young son who is very similar, and I just loved hitting things and running after things, and I was very competitive. Do you feel
better doing that? Does a child feel better?
I
More
didn't
blood
know,
running through it? What's going on?
I didn't know any different, so I didn't know what it would feel like to not. I just knew that every part of me was more comfortable if I was moving, which then turned into competing. You know, I was comfortable competing, I was comfortable chasing after things, but yeah, I had to move.
You got any competitive sports in high school or grammar school? Or what?
Yeah, so starting, you know, I was looking forward to, I think we had to wait till 5th grade to play competitive soccer. But every recess from kindergarten to 5th grade, I'd go out first on the field, get the people together, get a group over there, and then we'd play. So I was looking forward to that for as long as I could.
I know you had quite a career, I heard. I don't know the details. Give me the details. Quite a career playing soccer in high school?
Yeah, so pretty good career. I was part of an awesome group that came up right through the youth program. So just sort of what this is about, right?
And won all the championships.
Yeah, we did win a state championship my junior year, and then we went back senior year. And then I played tennis right through high school too, and we went, had great seasons all around. We had a couple undefeated seasons. We didn't end up going all the way to championship. The Burlington teams were quite good. But I was with a very active group as well. That was phenomenal.
So then your father was saying, okay, you did all that stuff. Now you're playing to earn a living. How'd you get involved with Vermont Sport and Fitness?
Right. So actually, true to what probably happens to a lot of people in colleges, you build up debt. Right, so you take on these loans. Now I played all in college, so I played 2 sports in college.
Oh, you played?
I went to Assumption College and I played soccer for a year there, walk on, and I played 4 years of tennis for Assumption College, which was Division II, and they were an incredible team, like just unbelievable. And so when I, played intramurals and stuff, and when I left, you've got to make money.
And from a tennis standpoint, did you have a standing in a national stadium?
Yeah, so the team I was on was over 8 years was 118-0. So it might be one of the longest record. I have no idea.
118-0.
Oh, yeah.
You never lost?
Yeah. So that was 4 years before me, and then my team all the way. Yeah. So I was a small part of that team. I mean, in Vermont, I have won the Vermont Open, and I've played great here. But on that team,
you won the Vermont Open.
Yes, I've won the Vermont Open, but as an adult. But on that team, the players were Division I level. I mean, they were above and beyond my skill, but I certainly like competing.
118-0.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And there were guys on the team who didn't, lost one match maybe their whole college career. So.
Oh my God.
So it was cool. So it was cool to be a part of that many athletes. And the soccer team I ended up walking on. I wanted to play. I ended up playing junior year, and I got to start on that team and got a couple goals. So I was living exactly the way I wanted to. College sports are not quite as great as high school sports in terms of the camaraderie and all that, because everyone's lives are a little different. But I was always moving. But what happened right after college is I had to pay, right? So I said, well, I'll get a job. And so I got a job in a bank doing loans, and then the industry collapsed, right? So I was learning how to do mortgages as the crash happened.
Go to work.
Get a job.
Get a job.
So I did that, and then I finally realized it was just so not true to who I was. I mean, I was kind of miserable, which isn't really like me. Yeah. It didn't make sense. It didn't feel right. I didn't actually like the whole thing. So I ended up getting into a YMCA down in Rhode Island, and I loved it. I was working with kids again. I actually worked in daycare. I was running an after-school program. I got to do some of their gym stuff, setting up obstacle courses. And I realized, this is where I need to be. I don't know. You sort of maybe feel like you have to leave your sports behind, but you don't have to.
So you got involved with your own now, the Vermont Sport and Fitness.
Yeah.
Now, tell me why, I know you have your own, but from your own expert opinion now, why is it important for young kids to play, for their body and their minds? What really goes on?
Right. So obviously there's people who are experts in this field, but my own, personal experience with it is that we were meant to move. I mean, for thousands of years and hundreds of thousands of years, we didn't sit around. We didn't watch TV. We didn't,
we're running away from animals.
Right, yeah, we're running to them or away from them, right? So I think our brains are they're not designed for all this sitting, and they're not designed to not move. And we see that. People are suffering, a lot of youth are suffering from a lot of mental issues right now, and I think a lot of it is just this sedentary lifestyle where the phone is occupying so much of their time, and you're really not moving. I mean, even my little kids, if they're playing, even if they're watching TV, they're up and moving, but like the phone is a very stationary thing. You're literally stoic.
So you think a lot of the problem that the children might be having because they're just not moving, whether they're exercising formally or just playing.
Yeah, I do. I think
the sedentary part of it.
Yes, I think by the time it gets to teenagers, it's very complicated in the social media and stuff. But yeah, I think it starts with not moving. And then when you don't move, you don't feel good, you don't burn off that energy, you don't get blood flow to your brain. And we know, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
If you don't use your muscle, you lose it. And it's the same thing with your brain.
Are there any data available like that about?
I think there's tremendous data on youth moving. I think they talk a lot about free movement. I don't think they necessarily say you have to exercise, you have to play on a team, but you have to move because that blood flow, I mean, when you're moving and those muscles are pumping, you're getting tons of blood flow. Even at, there's so much data when you're 80 plus. If you're not moving, if you're not learning new sports and learning new things, then all of a sudden, parts of your brain are shutting down. So you need that. So I just kind of believe that it's inherent in people. I think it makes people happier. Obviously, it releases endorphins and things like that. But I think it gives you confidence. It gives you energy, and a lot of life is energy.
You don't necessarily have to play competitive sports. You just don't.
Yeah, I think competitive sports, for me, have been phenomenal. I probably even underestimate how valuable that's been, because in life you face so many challenges where your back's up against the wall, but through sports you learn to be down 3-0. You learn to be against it.
And it also required a lot of formal exercise. Competitive sports, you had to exercise.
Yeah, and nobody likes preseason training, but you do it, and then all of a sudden you can run forever, and all of a sudden then you can execute your skills, right? If you're playing soccer and you're exhausted, you're not really going to be able to score if you can't, get your
okay. So the data, you did it yourself, and you're doing it now, and your recommendation is, I like the idea when you said that you have to move.
Yeah, have to move.
You have to move and make it fun for the kids and so forth.
And the key is to find any way possible to move. So yes, some of it is in a formal setting, some of it's in a gym setting, some of it's on a team, but the key is, get outside. Just walk around your block. If you just walk around your block with your friends and you go find things to do in the woods or stuff like that, that's movement. There's no difference between that.
Just the blood to the brain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then I think, it all builds up.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was Dan. I hope we shared a lot of information with you. And I hope, too, that you remember that for the last 11 months, we've been talking about ideas so we can do transformative thinking. We need transformative thinking because we have to solve new problems with old. We can't solve new problems with old ideas. That's basically what it is. I hope I've been helping. I hope you have. But if you have some ideas, like I always say, if you have some ideas, send them to me and we'll discuss them. If you don't want to do that, send them to your legislation. Or if you are in a position where you are actually making those decisions, use these mechanisms. We need transformative, creative ideas, nonlinear ideas. We cannot solve new problems with old ideas. I want to wish you a happy holiday season. I'm Lou Scott. This is the Geppetto Room. Until next year.